truth is in order to follow it. So these are two very important characteristics that we must keep in mind if we want to continue to follow the straight path. And also we see, and this is another topic, but I'll just mention it briefly here, is that we can see from Surah Al-Fatiha is that we believers, and we who want to be along the straight path, the path that leads to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should have no desire whatsoever to follow or be like those people who have strayed from this path. And this is should be something obvious, but sometimes in practice it doesn't become that clear. And we who want to be along the straight path, we should have no desire whatsoever to be following the ways or imitating the ways of those people who have strayed from this path. In other words, we should have no desire, for example, to be like the Jews and Christians whatsoever. There should be no feeling in our hearts to follow them and imitate them in any way, because there are people who are clearly left this path. So either you want to follow this path or you want to follow their path. And this is why the concept of al-wala wal-bara is something so essential and something so basic to this deen. Because in fact, either you're going to follow this path that leads to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, either you want to follow that path or you want to follow all those other paths that lead away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there's a number of other points that we could make about this straight path. I don't know how much. 5 minutes. All right. One aspect about this straight path is that we have to realize that it is the greatest, getting the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being guided to this straight path. This is the greatest blessing that we could ever attain. And of course, being guided to the straight path means iman and the deeds that are consistent with this straight path. I mean, this is the greatest blessing that we could ever get. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put it in Surah Al-Fatiha. Al-Kitab has ordered us to recite it and ask for it in every rak'ah of every prayer. And if you could get this blessing is worth much more than anything in this dunya. And this dunya is not worth anything in comparison to having this blessing of being along the straight path. And again, as I said at the beginning, this is things that every one of us should know, but maybe just sometimes we need a reminder. And because it's very easy, especially nowadays, it's very easy to start chasing after this dunya and start to forget wherein in fact is your real good and wherein in fact is what is really best for you. Because you have to realize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give this dunya to anyone, even kafir. And in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is this dunya worth? In a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ told us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this dunya to those people whom He loves and those people whom He doesn't love. but He only gives the deen to those whom He loves. And this is the true and the greatest ni'mah, or the greatest blessing that we could ever receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so therefore achieving this straight path and staying on this straight path, and is something that we should always keep in mind and put it first in our lives. And everything that we do, every action that we take, and we should do it with the intention that this will help us continue along the straight path and will keep us along the straight path. And if we get to that point, we'll be like some of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, who used to consider their sleep as a kind of ibadah, as a kind of worship. Because their sleep gave them the strength to help them continue along the straight path. Well, even with respect to this dunya also, even with respect to this dunya, and following this straight path is actually the best, even with respect to this dunya. Because by following this straight path, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you the real life, the only life of happiness, the only life which is consistent with your nature, the only life you could have where you're not going to be unhappy all the time. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا إِلَّا دَيْنَ آمَنُوا اسْتَجِيبُوا لِلَّهِ وَلِرَسُولِهِ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. And respond to Allah and His Messenger when they call you to that thing which gives you your real life. And the only ones actually who are living in this life, in this dunya, who have the real life, are the believers. And the disbelievers are like the dead. They're like animals. They have no existence really here. And their life here is a difficult life. And they have ma'ishatan dhanka, and they have a difficult and hard life in this life and in the hereafter. In the hereafter, we know what will be the end of the hereafter. So when we talk about this Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path, as being the greatest ni'mah that we can have, and we're not just talking about with respect to the hereafter, where this path leads us directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and saves us from the hellfire and the punishment in the hellfire. But also even in this life, and it is the greatest life, it is the greatest blessing that we can receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And let me just make two more points, since my time is almost finished. Almost. It's probably finished, but I would say almost finished. Just two points that, as I said, maybe sometimes we don't think about it. One of these points is, as I just said, we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the greatest blessing that we could ever receive, and to be guided to the straight path, to be shown what is the straight path, and to be given the iman and the ability to follow that straight path. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who knows that this is the greatest blessing there is and the most important thing there is, has ordered us by His mercy, has ordered us to ask for this in every rak'ah of every prayer. Because we could be negligent and forget about it and forget really wherein lies our true happiness and our true life. However, also by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us in the Quran to ask for this, for being guided to the straight path, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this blessing in a way, and subhanallah, in a way that may lead to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granting this blessing to us. We begin by saying Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'een. We begin with the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His beautiful names, His names of mercy and compassion, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And then we ask, and then we tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have the intention to worship only Him. So we call Him by His most beautiful names, and then we ask Him, by our intention to worship only Him, to guide us to the straight path. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His mercy has not only ordered us to make this dua in every rak'ah of every prayer so we do not forget wherein our true happiness is, and that we continue to ask for it every day, and 5 times a day, and in every rak'ah of those 5 times a day, and then, but also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us how to ask for it in such a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant it for us. Again, if we're sincere in our dua, if we make a dua like this, as the Prophet ﷺ has shown in many different hadith in which the different Sahaba made dua in a specific way, and the Prophet ﷺ said that this dua certainly will be answered, or a dua like that will certainly be answered. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us and shown us to make dua to Him for the most important thing that we can have, and at the same time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown it to us and has ordered us to do it in such a way that even the form that we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will lead Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant it to us. And finally, from Surah Al-Fatiha we see that being guided to the right path, to the straight path, and this guidance can come only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely. And when we do that, inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide us. But if we think that on our own, we will be guided or we will find the right path and follow the right path, or if we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking for that, although in our hearts really we don't want it, we don't seek it, we don't desire it, but we desire and seek something else, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what is in our hearts, and He will not grant us that. So let us make sure that our dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us to the straight path is a sincere desire, a sincere dua on our part, such that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer that dua and guide us to that greatest blessing that we could achieve.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Jamaal, for this very insightful and inspirational type of speech. Inshallah, we now have approximately 30 minutes to deal with questions and answers. If any of the sisters, of course, wish to ask any questions, they can write it on the slip of paper and have possibly one of the children to pass it up here. And of course, if any of the brothers wish to ask any questions, we have, particularly some of the brothers, for example, maybe in the back, we do have a microphone back there in which they can come up in order to give forth their questions. Yes.
So my congratulations, Sister Winston, I want to ask a question about we are worried about the right path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our daily life, that is the deen. But in such environment as the world, or as America, or for Muslims who come from a Christian background, or something like this, in an event of such a person that if your mother is Christian, and she stays Christian, and you can Islam, and then your mother dies, and all of a sudden, everything goes very fast. And all the family wants you to access the ceremony, and that's a Christian ceremony. What do you do according to your word, to that word?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And a part of the aspects that we see from Surah Al-Fatiha something you alluded to in your question, and that is, even though the people who read Al-Fatiha in every rak'ah, even though they are believers, and if they still need guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every moment of their life. And even though we are believers, and there are those who recite Al-Fatiha in general, they should be believers obviously, otherwise they wouldn't be coming to Salat and so forth in general. And even though they are believers, they are still asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for hidayah, for guidance, because they need guidance in every moment of their lives. So sometimes things will happen in your life that will be very difficult for you emotionally, or very difficult for you to deal with within the realms of the deen. But inshallah, if you are making this dua properly, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you see what is correct and will give you the ability inshallah to follow what is correct. So your exact question was more of a fiqh nature, and I don't know if our monitor here would like me to answer it, or but I will just give you some advice, and that is that anything that has a religious connotation to it, from the Jews or Christians or any other religion, anything that has a religious connotation to it, you must avoid. Anything that does not have a religious connotation, or anything that is clearly approved by the Sharia, this you can do. For example, going to your family, other family members, and consoling them, or what's the word called when someone dies? Condolences, yeah. Going to them and giving them condolences, and this kind of thing. This is not. There's evidence in the Sharia that this is acceptable. However, as I said, anything which is related to a religious nature must be avoided. So any kind of gathering which they're going to have in the church and prayer, or for the dead body and so forth, even if that prayer is, for example, at the funeral site, which is common among Christians, these should be avoided. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you, He will inshallah make you strong and make you able to follow the Sharia inshallah.
I would like you to comment on the ayah that you can. When Allah says, وَلَوْ أَنَّا كَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَنِ اقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ أَوِ اخْرُجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِكُمْ مَا فَعَلُوهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ مِنْهُمْ وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ فَعَلُوا مَا يُوعَظُونَ بِهِ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ وَأَشَدَّ تَثْبِيتًا وإذا لآتيناهم من لدنا أجرا عظيما ولهديناهم صراطا مستقيما.
From what aspect do you want to?
Well, can you give explanation of this? Like what's the cause of the revelation of this ayah, or how should we understand this? How should we act according to this ayah? How should it affect us and according to following the straight path?
Just comment. The important aspect of that verse is obviously that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders a people, or when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us, for example, to do anything from the Sharia, when we're ordered to do anything, There's two or three approaches that people take. One is that they submit to it and they do it. This is the approach of the true believers. And when they do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them blessings in both this life, and it makes them even stronger along the straight path and increases their guidance and increases their iman. And this is the proper way for believers. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us to go to qital, we should go to, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us to go to fighting or make jihad, we have to go, and we go because we know that this is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this is what is correct for us to do. When we do it, when we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases our iman, keeps us firm on the deen, and keeps us along the straight path. If we hesitate, or if we and if we refuse to do it, obviously if we refuse to do it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may not bless us, may not help us stay upon the straight path and so forth, because of our own obstinance and our own refusal to follow the path. Allah A'lam. Not the question.
We have a question here from one of the sisters. It says, if scholars of Islam give you different interpretations of Quran and Hadith, which interpretation should the average Muslim follow so as to stay on the straight path and not deviate to different scholars?
Deviate to different scholars? As I alluded to in the lecture, the most important thing is to have the intention and the desire to follow what is the truth. That's the most important thing. However, and it is clear from the Prophet ﷺ, as we'll talk about in one of the later lectures, that you will not necessarily always find the truth. And because of some shortcoming on your part or some lack of knowledge and so forth, you may not always find the truth. But the important thing is to have the intention to follow what is true. Inshallah, even if you have the intention to follow what is true and you do your best to follow what is true, then you will be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if the action you did may be wrong. So that's the first point, is that in the face of all of the different opinions or different interpretations of something, the most important thing in your heart should be that you want to follow what is the truth. What is the way of the Quran? What is the way of the Prophet ﷺ? What is consistent with the Quran and the way of the Prophet ﷺ? And inshallah, if you have that in your heart, then even if you are mistaken, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would still reward you for your deed. And there's no question, for example, that, let's say like the question of bleeding, having some blood come out, whether or not that invalidates the wudu or not. Some of the great scholars said yes, and some of the great scholars said no. Obviously, the correct opinion is one or the other. However, this doesn't mean that those people had the incorrect opinion that their salat will not be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they did not make wudu after bleeding. Or if they did, I guess it wouldn't matter. The point is they had the intention, inshallah, to follow what is correct, and that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges people. So you start off with that point, and you do your best to follow what you believe is the truth, what you believe is the correct opinion, and so forth. Now, not everybody has the ability to ascertain and to judge between different opinions and find out what is the correct opinion. Even scholars sometimes, on some points, they don't have that ability. They have to make they have to follow what other scholars said and make taqleed and so forth. But as I said, and even in the light of that, you follow what has been shown to you to be the strongest opinion, and never, you do your best never to follow an opinion just because it is an easy opinion or just because you see a lot of people following it or something of that nature, but you do your best, inshallah, to follow what you believe is the truth. As long as you do that, even if you should follow a wrong opinion, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, given certain conditions, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you, inshallah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum
I have one question about the Fatiha. As we know, alhamdulillah, we are all Muslims and we are praying, every day, 5 times a day, and we're reciting Fatiha. And one verse in the Fatiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, that we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the straight path. So in order for us to be on the straight path, is there any special things that if we do, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us to be on the straight path? At the contrary, the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu says, nobody is going to enter to the paradise by his deed only, but the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for us to get the blessing of Allah and his grant, and also to be on the straight path, is there any special things or something if we do, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept our prayers and keep us on the straight path?
I did until the end there, and then you clear it up.
We are reading Fatiha, okay?
Yeah.
Okay? And we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the straight path.
Yeah.
Okay? So in order Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our prayers, is there anything that we can do, okay, special things? For example, if we make our niyyah to sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us and accept our prayers. Is there anything that we can do to help?
I think that's the topic of another lecture that we'll be covering, the means to stick to the straight path. Inshallah, that will be covered in another lecture. Inshallah, I'm not sure when, where, hopefully someplace in Toronto, I guess. It's Monday morning, inshallah. So that will be covered in a complete lecture, inshallah. Or at least I guess this is the English version. It will be a lecture in English on Monday morning, inshallah, covering that.
Dr. Jamaal, you allude to the issue of unity and all this means one or many paths. But it's an issue that always comes and will always come in this society. And I would like if you would, especially with your experience with Dawah here in North America, to tell us if there are certain points or landmarks in the term of unity to look for if that call to unity is really a good one and one should join and put some effort into. And on the same, by the same token, if there are landmarks to tell you that, well, we have to be aware of that call and maybe try to invest in something else.
I think the greatest sign, or I guess the biggest red light you could call it, is when you're asked to compromise on some principles that are very clear from the Quran and Sunnah. And when you're asked to ignore some things which are very clear from the Quran and Sunnah, and ignore them in the name of unity. This is when you get to the point where you realize that unity is not the unity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to have. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And you have to stick together بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. حبل الله is the Quran or the teachings of Islam and so forth. So if you are coming together and they're saying, okay, we're coming together, but at the same time we are expecting you now to ignore some principles of the deen, some clear aspects of the deen, then this means that this is not the kind of unity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to have. So that is the major sign, and that as soon as you see that you're being asked to compromise something which is clear from the Quran and Sunnah, and it's clear from the Quran and Sunnah, something there's no question about, not a matter of ijtihad, something of that nature, but something clear from the text of the Quran and Sunnah, then immediately you know that this is not the kind of unity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to have, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not ask us to be united and at the same time give up part of our deen. And we are working for our deen first, and if anyone wants to work with us, that's fine. And we're working for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the deen first. We're not working for unity in the name of unity first, and the deen comes second. That's wrong. And we have to work for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the deen first, and if anybody wants to come along and join us, and then we get that, also that other goal or that blessing of unity, then that's fine. So in other words, unity has to come after the requirement of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obeying the Quran and Sunnah and so forth.
Okay, one of my question is, according to the prayer of the Fajr, we all wish that we follow the straight path, the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now these brothers and sisters in Islam, everybody seems to have the right path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have every kind of nation, every kind of religion, we're going to say to you, we are the straight path, we are the right religion. And even among different groups in Islam, we follow this. Because sometimes we have different formation of this, we get our way, we get your way. The thing is, what I am a proposition for like us about what is the straight path of guidance for the Muslims in North America to lead them to follow the straight path and not get influence of substance evil information who are spread around to destroy the human. So what was it?
I cannot speak on behalf of Ayana. I'm just a guest speaker here. Just a guest.
I have to go on the line?
So the man came all the way from Montreal, but he cannot go all the way to the microphone.
My question is that you mentioned that Ibn Qayyim said that one of the characteristics of the path is that it is easy. And I always thought that, since the Prophet said that there will be a time when one will stick to his religion, will be like clutching on a hot coal, then how can you make these two things meet together, easiness and like it feels like it's hard to follow the straight path at the same time.
Well, first of all, I don't believe, or at least I shouldn't have said, that Ibn Qayyim said it is easy, but I said it gets you to go in the quickest and fastest way. And then I added some points that it is consistent with our fitrah and so forth. That makes it easy, and this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you mentioned, is an authentic hadith, but it is referring really to the fitna or the tests and the trials of this dunya that can make things difficult for someone to stick to the deen. But that doesn't imply at the same time though that the deen itself has become something difficult, or without a strong iman the person will not be able to go past through those things with ease and with pleasure even and so forth. But along the way he will face some hardships, some harms to him, but this doesn't necessarily mean that if his iman is strong that he himself will feel and that this is the deen that he cannot fulfill or something of that nature.
We have time for possibly one more question, if anyone has any.
Let's go back to the question that one of the sisters asked, and that was, which opinion to follow? Do you think, Brother Jamaal, I mean, there could be a difference there between what opinion to follow in terms of fiqh and what opinion to follow in terms of aqidah or belief? And because if I see myself and some of the brothers or sisters, that we sometimes mix those two aspects. And it makes it, first of all, maybe sometimes confusing or difficult for the person to accept that yes, there could be different opinions, unless they know that, there's part of aqidah and there's part of fiqh. So I don't know what's your comment on this.
First of all, as is so often the case, questions really are, if someone were to give a proper and complete answer to this question, for example, that the sister asked, it would be another lecture. So I don't think, or it could be even a series of lectures sometimes. I don't think that's what you want right here. So in responding to that question, I tried to give the basic and the most important starting point. Now, with respect to your question, however, at least it seems to me, the situation would be, or should be, let me put it that way, should be quite a bit different. Because in matters of aqidah, the beliefs and so forth are something very clear and taken directly from the Quran and Sunnah. And there's no room really for ijtihad. And if there's something beyond what we know or what we understand, or something beyond what the text stated, we leave it. So with respect to aqidah, it is much easier, and there should be much less of a problem for an individual to see what is correct. Now there's some issues of ta'wil or so forth that maybe need some clarification for some people. But matters of fiqh are a different issue completely, because matters of fiqh, you'll get into many things that may not have been dealt with directly by a text of the Quran and Sunnah. It's sometimes a matter of bringing different evidences together and seeing which one applies to the current situation. So that's where you're going to get much more difference of opinion. That's where you're going to find a case where it's much more difficult to determine what is the correct opinion. Because someone could invoke one hadith which seems to apply there. Somebody else could invoke a different hadith that also seems to apply, that leads to a different conclusion. Somebody else might invoke a legal principle that leads to a third conclusion, and so forth. However, if the matter of aqidah is approached correctly, these kind of difference of opinion should not exist. And I think in general, except for, as I said, in particular the matter of ta'wil and how to deal with that, that's where most of the problems here in the United States at least have arisen. Otherwise, as I said, those are things that should be clear from the Quran and Sunnah and should not lead to a great deal of difference of opinion.
This will, of course, complete this particular session.